Meeting is in person. It can be viewed on local cable channel 1303 or on the internet by accessing townhallstreams.com and selecting Bucksport. Questions or comments may be submitted prior to or during the meeting by emailing slsard@bucksportmaine.gov or during the meeting by calling 469-7368. Roll call, Jake.
Councilor Eastman.
Present.
Councilor Morrison.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Bissonnette.
Here.
Mayor Stewart.
Here.
Councilor Ormsby.
Here.
Councilor Down.
Here.
Councilor Ray.
Here.
Presentation of town council recognitions. I don't believe we have any. Minutes of previous meetings, the town council minutes from 5/12/22. How would the council like to proceed?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Item 5 is receive and review correspondence. We have 4 police calls, 3 police calls. May 15th, 16th, and May 10th, all in Verona. Got some information on the safety grant, Angel Lights, $27.99.72. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. And also the Down East Transportation Ridership Report for April 2022. Next is ordinances to consider or introduce. We have none. Discussion items. First is courtesy boat inspections and invasive plant patrols for Silver Lake. I know town manager sent out some information, and
I did. There has been a group of local people who have been meeting and discussing how we should be caring for Silver Lake as our local water supply. Hans, who's here this evening, did a synopsis of sort of what has evolved to date and looking at that. At one time, there was a more active Silver Lake group that has somewhat waned, and so there hasn't been many lakes have lake associations which look out for the health of the lake. They do courtesy boat inspections, they do invasive plant patrols, education, all those kind of things. And Silver Lake doesn't have that, but as we know from what's already happened in Alamoosic, it is really important that we look to the health of the lake. And so in discussing ways to start that in this year, when we don't have an organization that is set up to hire boat inspectors or do that kind of thing, that we actually have done what we do in many things, is look to entities who are doing something well and see if we can form a partnership to see it with them doing that. And the Toddy Pond Lake Association has agreed, if the council and is in favor of it, to operate a courtesy boat inspection program for Silver Lake for this year, while the local group that's been meeting gets organized to look at how that future might look. Maine Water Company, which has water rights providing the water, has agreed to provide almost half, $1,500 of the total cost of this program. And the other portion, $1,838, I think it would come from the town, and I'm suggesting that come from recreation, because that lake is not just a water supplies, it's also a big recreational. We have representatives, Lucy Leaf is here this evening from the Toddy Pond Association, if anyone had any questions, but I'm asking the council for use of that amount of money so that we can have this courtesy boat inspection program active at Silver Lake this summer. That is a step towards ensuring that invasive plants don't end up in Silver Lake, number one, but it also says to boaters who are coming here that the health of the lake is important and that the community is paying attention to make sure that that occurs.
questions?
There
there is a Silver Lake Association. My mother's ahead of it.
The Silver Lake, when Hans was looking at, there was, who was the, would you mind coming up?
Thank you. Yeah, that's my mom.
Linda Ford. Linda Ford came to a, hi, I'm Hans, you know. Linda Ford came to a Bucksport Next meeting a couple of years ago and talked at length about how she was tired of doing it. And asked me to take over then, and I talked to another member then, Steve Fight, and a few other people. I've contacted all the original members, and none of them really are interested. Let's point B. Point A, except for possibly Steve Fight. Also, they were never incorporated. And one of the reasons this is so helpful to have the Toddy Pond Association help us get going is the fact that they have all the required infrastructure for channeling the funds to the boat inspectors. So they're being very gracious to help us out. Hopefully we can get on our own feet and do it. I hate to say this without you. The other thing, two things I would point out here, in addition to what you said, Sue, if I can take just another minute, is that the water company sort of surprised me when I started looking into this, because they put me in touch with this woman, Mary Jane Dillingham, who you've met now, Sue, who was the president of Maine Lake Association, Maine Lake Stewart Association, whatever, for many lakes, what's the term?
Lake Stewards of Maine.
Lake Stewards of Maine for many years. In the last 4 years, though, she's been hired by our water company, Maine Water Company, to ensure quality control of our drinking water. And she pointed out to me early on in this that that is limited to what comes out of our faucet. It doesn't, she's got no power over what's coming into the lake, either through the aqueduct or through the lands around the lake. So she is really supportive. She would be here tonight. She volunteered, called to Zoom in. She's very supportive. A couple of days ago, she and myself and Lucy here and Sue Lessard and Mark Hawes, who's the director of the Silver Lake Estates out there, we all Zoomed together, and I was just blown away. I'll have to tell you guys as a citizen, and I would think you guys as counselors, when you look at Sue Lessard and Lucy and Mark Hawes, and also this, Mike Hawes and Mark Whiting of Hancock County Soils and Water Conservation, who's behind us on this and working to make it happen. It's really an impressive team, really. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not an expert on any of this, but I know expertise when I see it. So, I'm trying to think of, the other thing I would like to put in a plug for is I went on early in this. I was trying to find out, one of the things I found from the early Friends of Silver Lake, who were not incorporated and couldn't really handle any money side of it, was that a boat issue, having a boat and ready access to the lake was a real problem. I mean, that's what I heard from, I think, Steve Fight and somebody else. So, I'm sorry, what? Chris Johnson said that too. Yeah, he was part of that association back then. And so I went looking around at the lake and saying, well, who's got a boat? We're not like Toddy Pond or not like Alamoosic Lake, where we have all these cottages all around and all these people really retired or playing for the summer who are happy to go do all this. We don't. There's nobody out there except, it dawned on me, there's new development out there at Silver Lake. I mean, this is a retirement community, or a community of retired people who live on the lake and may or may not have boats. So I went out and talked to Mike Hawes, and he was really enthusiastic, and his second in command out there was really enthusiastic. And they've got a man out there, David Chambers, who really wants to be one of these inspectors out there. He's an 80-year-old man, but anyway, I was really impressed by them and their enthusiasm, and it really struck me. These people, some people in town I know didn't want the development out there. There's some controversy over it, but it's there. These people live on the lake and they care about it. So I think any way we can employ them in this effort is great. So I did go out. Lucy again volunteered to come out with me last week and meet with Mike Hawes and David Chambers. And David Chambers got us in his goal. They've got 2 points of access to the lake. They've got a pontoon boat that they go out on. They've got fishing boats. They've got kayaks. And these people love the lake. And so David Chambers took Lucy and me in his golf cart down a rocky path to, you know, the bar and just showed us the basics of how they access the lake and what, you know. So anyway, the enthusiasm out there was high. So putting all of that together, and then the Zoom call the other day with Sue and all these other people, I mean, it just made sense to try for us to take responsibility for the. The other footnote I want to put in here, I should have said right at the beginning, is this from everybody. These are all experts I've been talking to. This is a critical issue, not just the courtesy boat inspection. That's the expensive part because the inspectors have to be paid. But there's also IPP, invasive plant control. I think that's what it stands for. I'll put Lucy up here because she knows this stuff. And that's a whole separate thing. And again, there are people out there who are willing. I'm willing to participate in that. I've talked to other people in town who are willing to participate in that. Lake associations are willing to train us. They're willing to use the community center out at Silver Lake to run a training and then do more training down on the shore. So that part of it shouldn't be a problem. So
Thank you.
I guess that's, yeah.
Any questions?
Yep.
So is there any opportunity for, service learning or anything with the school system, like with the high schoolers or middle school, like to be able to learn about some of this stuff while you guys are going through this process? Or?
I would think so, but I would really defer. Can I
Yep.
get
Very much
Lucy
so.
up here?
Yep. Okay.
I'd like her to go up there.
That's all right.
Did you want me to say more about that, or? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm just curious if there's that opportunity for them. If you guys reach out to them, do they reach out to you? Is that that open?
Yeah, this is quite a collaboration already, and I'm from Toddy Pond Association, and I'm the one that basically, we have a 501c3 status, so we could actually accept funds, and we're willing to reach out to help the community get a courtesy boat inspection program, which is really just the first line of defense, and then there's the plant patrol, which is, looking for the plants if they're established, and, studying that lake, and then there's also water quality, data that is collected all through the season, which Mike Cause is willing to do, and so there's lots of opportunity, and our volunteers can be used in the courtesy boat inspection program, as well as plant control, as well as the water quality. So it goes all the way. There's more oversight, and there's more, just overall training involved. But we would love to reach out to young people because for the most part, it is often the retirees that have the time.
Yep.
And then we're aging out, So, like I've already, on a volunteer basis, I've already been to your lake. I did the entire lake last year as far as the perimeter, just on a volunteer, and then working with Hancock County Soil and Water. So we're already kind of working a little bit. And we have actually reached out to your high school in seeking volunteers for our courtesy boat inspection program. We had several of them that were meeting their, there's some kind of, I forgot what it's called, they have to go out and do some community work or something
community
like
service.
that. And we provided that opportunity last year. And that could be, this year, however, we're just dealing with the paid part, and having to oversee the volunteers is another, big category of involvement for myself. So this year we're just wanting to get a paid person out there, show people what it is. They wear a t-shirt like this. Everybody gets a t-shirt like this that participates even as a volunteer. And the question that comes up, and DEP, puts out all the booklets, and they have all the stuff online and everything. So it's quite a program established, and it would be a good learning experience for the young people eventually.
Yep.
But one thing I like to, because this question comes up all the time, is that a courtesy boat inspector does not have an authority to prevent a boat going in, even if they're covered with plants. The most we can do, is ask them to please remove them, or could we remove? And we don't see this very often.
Yeah.
We're lucky to see one tiny fragment. Toddy Pond has intercepted twice milfoil, invasive milfoil going into our lake. We have a very busy landing, but fishermen fishermen go to lake a lot, and this is I think a bass fishing kind of lake, weedy and shallow, and it really lends itself to infestation, unfortunately. So,
Great.
yeah.
Thank you very
I'd like
much.
to also add, if I could, on the educational fund, as you asked then, this Mary Jane Dillinger, who's the quality person for the quality of our faucet water at the Maine Water Company. She works for the Maine Water Company throughout the state, but she's up here frequently. She wanted to come to this meeting tonight, but she has offered, she was at the last Bucksport Next meeting, Stephen York at the Congregational Church up here invited her to do a forum for the town, educating us on all aspects. What what our water company does. I never knew what our water company really does, or who owns them, or what their responsibility was for the lake. But she's willing to she will be doing a forum up there sometime in the next couple of months, and that will be another educational opportunity for the town. And if everybody agrees, I will try to get Don at the Enterprise to take some interest in all of this and maybe promote awareness of, what it really is. I mean, this is our water. It's our responsibility as a town to really take care of it. We can't ask the water company to do it, and we can't ask Toddy Pond to do it for us. So ultimately, I think it's our responsibility. So that's my spiel. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Everybody okay with Sue drafting something so we can, all right, thank you all very much. And I think we all agree that it is something we should make sure we're taking care of, so thank you. Next is Central Street sewer bids.
If you remember, there was a section of Central Street sewer that our superintendent, Dave Michaud, had talked to the council about. We had that designed and put it out and got one bid, and it's higher than estimated, and I'm asking that we just table this until we've had a chance to reach out to the bidder to see if there's any room to amend this a bit.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All right. Next is Borrego Solar, council approval to submit to planning board.
The gentleman from Borrego called today, said if you had questions, he would be watching the meeting and would call in if you had questions. You also received, I believe, a follow-up email from him after I responded about putting it on the agenda. Then he indicated today that that they were not looking for formal approval for a CZA at this time, but that they would go through the planning board process and then ask that the council have an open mind about, after that process, about considering this CZA.
I get really upset when folks don't, when they have to call out that we have to have an open mind on something. That just bugs the living heck out of me, that they don't think that we do that on all the stuff that comes in front of us. So, again, I'm not going to not have somebody go to the planning board. We've talked about this in the past, and Luke understands, and I think we've shown where we stand on things, and it's more work for him when it's going through a process, if he knows where it's going to end up. But I'm certainly not, I don't think anybody as council is going to discourage anybody from going through a process after they probably have seen, yeah, Luke, come on out.
So I have, and so has Sue, told them at length how the last one went, and I do feel like it's a waste of time if you guys are still against a contract zone. And I understand that a contract zone is, if that's not, I guess what I'd like is, if you guys are opposed to a contract zone, I'd love for you to just say that.
I'll tell you right now, I'm opposed to a contract zone for solar, for that purpose. I'm not going to say, I can't come out and say on a contract zone.
Oh, no, I get that, but I mean
just
for
like
this purpose.
just like the last project.
Yes.
you know, when I look at contract zoning, I want something, this is me talking, I want something more tangible than a bunch of solar panels that are gonna be up there, not producing anything that the town can take advantage of. I mean, that's my thoughts on it, and I'm pretty sure that most people understand that's what my thoughts are.
So I don't think it's appropriate for me to ask for a vote, per se.
I wouldn't call for a vote.
But can I get,
You can certainly ask, you know, if anybody has any comments here on the
because if they're
council.
watching, I want them to see how you guys feel about a contract zone before we spend months and public hearings and go through this whole process.
I feel the same way Peter does.
I still stand that way too.
Also, this is a relatively big project, relatively large area of land.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna bring any jobs in for local people. And as far as producing power for local people, only if you apply through the power company to get your power specifically from their solar array. And there's still no guarantee that that solar array is where your power is gonna come from. All you're gonna get is a contract with them saying that, okay, well, you've used 10 megawatts of electricity, you have 10 megawatts of electricity credit, thank you.
Okay. So at this point, if somebody comes to me and applies for a permit and it's not zoned for that, I would deny the permit. And if somebody comes to me and wants to take something to planning board and it's not something that's allowed in that zone, I would say, no, we can't take it to planning board because it's not allowed. So if they're only asking to do it with the condition of a contract zone, and the contract zone is clearly not an option, then I think that should be the end of the discussion, shouldn't it?
Yes, I would say
Again, I think
I-
you've heard from
yes.
a majority.
I've heard from the
so-
majority of the council, so, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Infrastructure Committee meeting update from 5/26/22.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really, I'll try to keep this brief. The majority of the council was here, but so I won't go down rabbit holes here on this. But the first item on the agenda with the Infrastructure Committee was around expanding the bus service from Down East Transportation. Right now, as you know, that runs one day a week on Wednesdays. Looking to expand that to Mondays as well, with the potential to expand that even further. There are schedule problems right now, for example, at the senior center. If you're at the senior center for lunch, it really precludes you from doing a number of, taking advantage of the shopping opportunities, for example, provided by the bus service. Yesterday was Wednesday, and the bus was at capacity, is what was reported to the committee for yesterday's run. There are not just seniors using the bus, which is, I mean, this is a very valuable service. It costs $1 for people to use the bus. It is being used at capacity. The recommendation of the Infrastructure Committee is for the council to consider approving the additional days of that service. At this time, at least one additional day, which would be Mondays. The other item on the agenda was the Planning Partnership Grant, which we actually had a presentation on our last regular council meeting, and the decision was to make sure the Infrastructure Committee had a chance to review that. As we discussed, the PPI, to get into the alphabet soup of this, is it does come with a consultant, of course, planning with participation, public participation, and as a reminder, it is a partnership with the Maine DOT. It also includes conceptual designs from the DOT, including cost estimates, etc. The recommendation of the Infrastructure Committee is to participate in this PPI process. To set an expectation around cost to the town for this, it would not exceed $40,000. That is what the action we'll be taking this evening has written in it.
Thank you. Questions? Next is agenda items. First is Resolve 2022-49 to approve the bid from Wardwell Construction for the Jacobuck Pond and Bucks Mills Road culvert projects. How would the council like to proceed?
Motion to approve.
We tabled this last time because we were $160,000 short, because of the limitation on the bond that we did in 2020 when this was approved. And so the engineer, Joe McLean from Acadia Civil Works, went looking for funding, and the Department of Marine Resources, because of the fact that this provides fish passage, is willing to participate and provide that additional $160,000 so that this project can move forward without the town needing to go back to referendum or to contribute one more dime than what was committed back in 2020 as part of that referendum.
Thank you. Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Next is Resolve 2022-50 to approve a planning partnership initiative project with MDOT. How would the council like to proceed?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions? You said the maximum outlay on this, Paul, was $40,000
That's what's written into
to
the,
start with? Right.
Yep.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Next is resignations, appointments, assignments, and elections. None. Approval of quick claims, discharges, and deeds. None. Item 11 is the town manager report.
I'm pleased to report that last night at the Maine Chiefs of Police annual meeting, 5 former members of the Bucksport Police Department were presented with life-saving awards. Public Safety Director Sean Gagan, Officer Matt Schmidt, Officer Eric Marcel, Reserve Officer Kayla Brooks, and former Officer Gerald Lowe were the recipients of these awards, which is pretty amazing in one year that 5 of our personnel were recognized for life-saving awards. I also want to congratulate Tyler Adams for graduating from the Maine Criminal Justice Academy on May 20th. I attended that ceremony along with others from the department. The school budget was adopted at the district meeting on May 25th, and the validation vote on that action will be on Tuesday, June 7th. At the Jewett School, voting hours will be from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. There were 29 people at the budget meeting, according to Superintendent Boothby. The town office and the transfer station will be closed on Monday, May 30th in honor of Memorial Day. The town office will reopen at 7:30 on May 31st, and the transfer station will reopen at 9 on Thursday, June 2nd. The Tim Emery Municipal Pool will open on Monday, June 20th for the season. We look forward to another year in which children of all ages enjoy this wonderful facility. I spoke to Mike Zielinski, who is our pool guy, who assured me that the pool would be all ready and up and running by the 20th. The town has engaged an arborist to treat trees on the waterfront walkway and Main Street that have been identified as having brown-tail moths. The injection process is supposed to last for 2 years. I want to thank everyone who participated in Make Bucksport Beautiful Day on Saturday, May 14th. The Public Works Department picked up many bags of trash and furniture and assorted other things that people collected while cleaning up the roadsides. And finally, it appears that the spring fountain is under contract with a sale pending. According to our attorney, the dangerous building order stays in effect on the property, and any new owner is required to fix it before it can be used. We are also pursuing a way to recover the costs of the dangerous building order itself. Since the appeal has not been adjudicated, we cannot include those costs on such an assessment.
Oops. Questions? Next is public hearings or approval of licenses and permits for the school budget validation and referendum warrant. Is that a public hearing or just us to approve?
Just a signature.
Take a vote. Yep. How would council like to proceed? Second. Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion of items not on the agenda for the council of the public. Anybody from the public have anything that's not on the agenda? Richard?
A few things. I first want to thank Larry Wall. He assisted Ron Gross and I this past week with putting the hanging plants up on Main Street. Code Officer Civelli, Superintendent Michaud, Jay Lanfer, myself, we walked the waterfront with GEI consultants, and they should have some results back for us within a month. As per the council request, and we'll get together with the waterfront committee and then share that with the council at that point. And then also I walked around with the arborist yesterday, as Sue had mentioned, and we identified 4 trees that need to be had the injection. And as Sue stated, the injection will last for 2 years. The injection, it'll kill them, will clip the branches. Unfortunately, we did have to take down 1 tree on the waterfront that was extremely bad. It had a lot of nests in it, so unfortunately we weren't able to save it, and we did take that one down. But the rest will be injected, and we'll be able to hopefully keep on top of it going forward.
What specifically, Rich, were you looking at with GDI?
We started from Irving and made it all the way down to the pizza. We looked at the riprap. We looked at conditions that have failed behind the Irving. They're going to the water company is going to be looking at their pump station that's going to need to be replaced shortly. So they've given that information in advance to GEI, who can potentially build that into what we're doing here, though they'll have their own engineers and people doing that. But they wanted to know information, any changes that might be happening on the waterfront. So as we do this resiliency plan, as we look at the materials of what should the walkway be made of, what trees, outfalls, pipes, they looked at everything when they were here. They asked for dates and stuff of projects that were completed and built. We were with them for over 4 hours. And then it was low tide, so they were able to do drone footage to get what they weren't able to see. When we started this, it was high tide, and by the time they left, it was low tide.
Did this also incorporate the new dock also, or is this, are we looking at them for 2 different things?
Yes, but that's the same group that completed that dock for us, and they are aware that one of the guys who was here actually helped work on that project. So they're going to take into consideration that project as well. I'm going to send them 2 documents that they requested: the adopt plan for potential use of if the railroad tracks move, for possible expansion of the walkway on that end, and also the report that the town had done in regards to the Historical Society and the potential of that being raised and what type of impacts that may have as well. So they're going to take a holistic approach of the reports that we've had done and incorporate that. If you do X, this is Y. If you do Z, this is this outcome. So it should be a very thorough report.
So I know 2 weeks ago, I don't know if you were involved, I know, Luke, you were involved with walking with Whole Oceans around their property, ish. I'm just kind of curious, I mean, you know, I think people want to know.
Yeah, we had a site meeting with the contractors where we went over expectations that the town had for them, inspections and stuff like that, how that was going to be handled, and we just met the team.
So it's still going forward?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It looked like, I think I can share it. It should be boots on the ground there doing some earthwork and stuff in a few weeks. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, actually, while you're here, one other quick thing I had, and I know Sue's got one other thing. Saw an article, and or it's an article, or an email that we all received about Franklin Street and the old Masonic Hall.
Yes.
I assume that they're going to be coming to you for a zone change, the folks that are looking to do something up there?
Yes, I brought that to the council.
And the reason, it's not them that sent the email, it's a butters, so.
It's, yes, one a butter.
Okay.
And certainly if the neighborhood feels that way, then that's something we have to take into account.
I just didn't know when that may take place. Do you have an idea of when?
So we're going to discuss that at the upcoming planning board meeting, as well as a bunch of other changes to the land use ordinance. and then if we have a consensus opinion or whatnot, then we'll have to have a second meeting and a public hearing, which will be advertised. And then if that goes through and the planning board still votes to recommend, then it would come to you folks, and you would have multiple readings in a public hearing as well. So there'll be multiple chances for citizens to have input, and certainly not trying to force a change down there.
No, I was just kind of curious if
But,
it had already started in the system.
No, over the weekend, my wife and daughter are going to be gone, so I'm going to spend some time writing ordinances.
Have fun with that, thank you. Sue?
Yes, I apologize. There was another item. June 25th would have marked 60 years that Frank Dunbar's Barber Shop was in operating in Bucksport. And I was approached and asked if the council would consider doing something sort of in honor of Frank on that day, maybe Frank Dunbar Day or something, so that in recognition of that local business that would have turned 60 on the 25th of June. And so I said I would ask the council if you would have any objection or an idea of how that might be handled.
Youth Hunting Day.
What's that?
Youth Hunting Day. Frank Dunbar scored Boone Crockett scores on antlers for years and years and years, and he was very, very into the hunting. And the youth hunting especially was real important to him, so I think probably that might be a good day to honor him.
But they want something on June 26th, right?
June 25th is the day they...
I understand, for his barber shop. But a lot of people know Frank just for his...
From the Rod and Gun Club.
Rod and Gun Club. And, yeah.
I'll ask, have we done anything like this in the past that you know of? Or?
We have recognized our poet laureate. We have certainly mentioned at council meetings,
Yep.
people that have been...
Did they have an idea of what they were looking for? Because
what she particularly said was something like Frank Dunbar Day, or just
a recognition.
Just a recognition, something that said that it went in the enterprise. It wasn't having a party. It was just a public recognition of the number of years that business was.
Maybe saying something like, today's the day you go get your hair cut. Really like to, and so it can be kind of on honor of what he did for so long. So we have a bunch of local people, barbers and stuff too. So
I would add that either in the charter or in council rules, you have the authority to do a resolution or an order of some sort recognizing an individual, so that could be appropriate also.
Anybody have a problem if Sue brings something up for the next council meeting that does that? Because I know they do it in the State House all the time too, right? Yeah.
No.
All right. Thank you. Anything else from the council not on the agenda? All right. Next is upcoming public hearings and committee assignments. First, we have a set a public hearing date for the 2023 General Fund Sewer Marina budget. We're looking at June 9th on that?
June 9th.
Okay. Actually, one other thing that's not on the agenda, myself and Deputy Mayor Bissonnette will not be available on the 23rd.
Up June.
So,
Should discuss about
yeah.
a second meeting of the...
So is that something that council wants to discuss? Do we want to do two in a row on the 9th and the 16th, or do we want to go until the 30th? Have one on the 30th? What do we have on the 23rd that was... Or do we even need to have another meeting?
The big event is the budget.
Right.
That's the 9th. I'm not...
I'll tell you what, if nobody has an issue, we will cancel the second meeting in June, and if we need to, we can call a special meeting probably for the 30th. Does that work with you, everybody?
Yep.
Okay, let's do that then. We'll cancel the 23rd, and then if something does pop up that we need to address before the end of the fiscal year, we can still meet on the 30th.
Okay.
All right. So we've set the public hearing date of the sewer, general fund sewer marina budgets for June 9th, and that will be at regular time, 7 o'clock?
It's part of your regular
meeting, right?
meeting.
All right. And now we go into budget review.
The first budget you have is the sewer budget. There weren't a lot of questions during that one. The increase in that budget is 0.33%, and that the result of that very minimal is because we changed last year after Mike Jackson retired to primarily contracted arrangement with Maine Water, and the reduction in employee-related expenses offset the majority of the contract change. And again, the point of tonight is what budget goes out. There's no approvals. It's what budget goes out to public hearing for people to look at and understand that that's what the council is putting out there, not what the council has approved or agreed to approve. So the first, as I said, the first one is the sewer budget. Are there questions or changes that the council would like to see in the sewer budget? Or is this something that the council is comfortable sending to public hearing?
No issues.
Okay.
The second one is the marina budget, and apart from the funding that you agreed to for the floats, the expenses of the marina budget are covered by revenues generated by the marina itself, and that the approved float amount is on the bottom of that face page. It's not part of the budget itself. The big increases in that is obviously the cost of fuel that is going to be then sold at a higher price too, so it drives the revenue in the other direction. But this is the enterprise account where the operation budget is funded entirely by revenues taken in from people who use the marina.
Questions? Okay to send that one?
Yes.
Good with that? The last one is the general fund. And I don't for 1 minute expect that one to go as quickly as either of the other two. But I sent you a memo on the overall budget, and I also made, if you looked at that draft, I made some recommendations for changes to some of the line items. The recommendations under social agencies were there to get us back to where it fell within our policy guidelines to do so. I did also recommend that in order to fund the library at the increased amount, that you use the difference between last year's and this year's appropriation from ARPA funding to increase to make that $30,000 donation to the library instead of the $14,000 that you had done in the past. Reduced my cost of living from 5 to 3%, removed my professional development. It had gone back in. I had removed it last year as well. And made an adjustment to the public safety director wage downward, and adjusted some of the reserve accounts. Primarily, the big one was ambulance. We've purchased one. That's a financed amount. We don't need to feed that one this year. It's very likely that your ambulance purchases will be on a 5-year rotating basis in the future, and those will be, it'll be a payment arrangement as opposed to accumulating $250,000 and buying one. Happy to answer any questions. As I said, the budget as presented includes the proposed contracts that I've been dealing with for police, fire, EMS, dispatch, and highway. The world has evolved in a very significant way, particularly in public safety. In the last 3 years, we were at comparability 3 years ago, and now we're nowhere near in terms of that. Because of the changed wage structure in police wages, because of the limited number of people and the competition for them. I'm sure you've all seen the bonuses of $20,000 and $30,000 that communities are paying to try and attract law enforcement. The wages in all of these proposed contracts don't put us at the top of the scale, and they don't put us at the bottom of the scale. They put us in the middle to upper middle, which makes us competitive for people to not use us as what I will call a puppy mill to train to go to other departments. Public Works was some adjustment, not anywhere near what police and fire were. Trying to think of all the things that I touched since you talked about this, but the funding of this, as our revenue sharing is due to be up approximately $180,000 over this year's budget, and this year's receipt is $158,000 higher than anticipated, and using those revenues leaves approximately $314,000 that would need to come from somewhere. And the options are to increase the amount you use from fund balance. I don't recommend that. Or to use some ARPA money in a larger way, or to have a mill rate increase. And nobody wants to say that out loud. There's not been a mill rate increase in Bucksport since 2015. At that time, the mill rate was $17.10. The mill rate right now is $16.25. Filling a $314,000 gap requires a 70-cent mill rate increase. For people with a $100,000 property, that would mean an additional $70 a year in property taxes. And even if you chose to use fund balance, that digs a hole that you would need to fill next year. And the majority of the budget and the increases are, they're fuel costs and those kind of things are significant, and wages. In explaining what I did with the fire department request is that our staffing needed 3 people, and rather than do 2 and 1, or what I am proposing we do is do a staggered hiring, one July 1, January 1, and then one the following July, which gets us to 3 people, but the budget impact is spread over 2 years instead of just 1 year. And also eliminating 50% of the per diem at the same time, because if you're bringing on full-time, then the per diem could be reduced, and that's $93,000 that came out of that budget that allowed for the full-time addition into it.
So-
As I said, the biggest pieces are the contractual wages. Those are the ones that. But there are other adjustments that I made. I've told you this before, was to create comparability across the board, and with the exception of the manager, because when in 2024 or 25, when you replace me, you will be hiring a manager and a finance person, because that, and you'll be paying benefits and doing other things that aren't. I am less concerned about where I stand in terms of salary than I am in ensuring that the organization is set up when I leave to have comparability across positions, so that we're moving forward that way. So that's the method to my madness, and why you see what you see. And I recognize that the numbers are not small. I can tell you that all of them are in the middle of where communities like us are in their current salary structure.
So one of the things that we've talked about every year when we talk about goals is keeping our mill rate the same. And if you recall, we never mentioned that this year, because I think we all knew that we've been fortunate to be able to stay where we've at and still keep services going. Understanding, and if anybody doesn't see it, that inflation and wages and everything else have gone up, and for us to compete, and I think we still want to compete, we need to make sure that we're, as Sue says, comparable. The one thing that we should understand with this budget, it's a big jump this year to get us caught up. Going forward, the way that I understood you say it is that the raises aren't 15 and 16% over the course of the contract. It's a 3% on top of that. So I think it's incumbent upon the council, when we look at this next year, that we may be in a position where we may see some savings, and not the big jumps, and we'll be able to look at things. I appreciate Sue and I talked, and I appreciate some of the adjustments you made. I don't know if any other councilors have talked to you. When you look at the tax dollar breakdown of what we spend our money on, what are towns supposed to spend their money on? It's education and town services or protection, and most of our money, over 80% of it, almost 90% of it, goes towards those two things. There's not a lot of fluff that we have left over to put into other items, but they're all necessary. And we do the best we can, trying to make sure that we still serve some of the agencies that come and ask for funds. And I think in this budget we reflect that we do.
One thing to ask about that too. I noticed in this that we have the Health Equity Alliance move to economic development, and that doesn't make sense to me, because they're a social agency. And so is it possible logistically to move them back to a social agency out of economic development?
There is a category for the Health Equity Alliance under social agencies, and that's where we've been funding the Health Equity Alliance for a number of years, and so moving it from economic development to social agencies is just a matter of moving the line. I mean, they were funded there prior to. I think that because this year's, the Health Equity Alliance was using the funding to fund the Pride Festival and events, that was felt to have an economic development component to it, and that's why it ended up under economic development. But whether it, under social agency, it can still perform that function, and depending on what the use of their funding is as in the future, it would still be under our social agencies.
Any other comments?
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, really. Yeah.
I had a couple questions. One was the economic development, the line 94. There's 3 in there, right? Fort Knox
Wednesdays on Main and Main Street Bucksport
and Health Equity.
and Health Equity.
And how much was each? I'm just looking at the...
Main Street Bucksport is 20,000.
30
Health Equity was 1,500, and Fort Knox was 9,000.
And Wednesdays on Main?
4,000. How do I remember all these numbers?
Okay. In the library, you said 8,500 from ARPA.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be doing 21.5?
Yeah, well, what I was originally going to take the difference, but what I was aiming to do was getting us down to the 73,000 and change that we are allowed to spend under our policy on social agencies. And in order to do that, it needed 8,500 from another source, and the ARPA for the library is a legitimate use of that.
Okay, so our contribution would be 21.5?
Yep, that's correct. Well, our contribution would be 30, but the source of funding would be
From
taxation 21.5 and 85 from ARPA.
In my last question, comment, number 81, social agencies, home health, hospice, EMHS. That's East of Maine, right?
Northern Health, Northern Light, yes.
I'm just going to state it, but I support all the hospice, but not Northern Light as asking money from the town. I just can't do that.
How does the rest of the council feel on that issue before we move on to?
I just feel that's a major corporation. I know this is a branch of theirs, it's nonprofit, but that's a huge corporation. I just don't. And I know, I understand it's only $250, but it's the principle of it in my head, so.
Anybody else?
Comments on that, or
That
comments
or
on-
anything? I mean, I'm okay leaving it in. I understand what you're saying, Ed, but then we can chase that down. You know, with Lifelight's a huge organization, but they're asking for money.
But a much needed.
Well, I would say hospice could be much needed too when you look at, and again, we can argue that Northern Light is rolling in money, but you look at their paperwork and they are a nonprofit when they talk about these things here. So
I understand, it's just
I get it. That's why I say I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with you.
I certainly, Councilor Rankin, I feel similar, but on a different line as you do. So I can respect how you feel on that issue. I do have a couple of just things that about the overall budget I just wanted to mention. The first is the library piece. I think as long as everybody understands that if we're funding the library this year at $30,000 and or a little over $8,000 of that comes from ARPA funds, We should be prepared for a conversation next year as to should the library expect to receive $30,000 again next year, and how will that be funded, or should the library expect to receive $8,000+ under that? That just should, let's not wait. I don't think, I'm putting it out on the table now, so it's not a conversation next March, because that's money that isn't going to be there forever, and this council has said repeatedly that is money designated for one-time purchases, one-time expenses, that type of thing, not recurring things. And the other, I'm only mentioning it because the town manager herself brought that up, but she makes a very valid point. She's put herself in for a lower raise than originally discussed, and while I'm not opposed to that, it remains a conversation for the council down the road when we do have to undergo the unfortunate task of replacing Town Manager Lassard. It is going to cost more to do that than what we are presently expending there. That is a cost that is waiting for us down the road. Maybe not this is the year to do exactly as the town manager suggests and go with a lower raise. I'm not opposed to that, but that is just something I would ask this council to also keep in mind as well.
As far as the library, Paul brings up a very good point. I was all in favor of giving the library extra this year, but in my mind, the 14 to 30 was
a big jump,
larger than I was anticipating. I was thinking maybe 4 or 5 more. But, so I think we need to consider for next year, definitely. This year we have ARPA, but I don't think it's realistic for them to. Maybe, who knows? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen year to year, but I don't want to be set in stone that now it's $30,000 a year.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm in favor of it. I'm in favor of funding it at that level. But I think we've all been through enough budgets now to know that once something gets into a budget, it becomes awfully hard to come out, or there's certainly an expectation that it will remain there. And I like to get ahead of those conversations as much as possible, and that seemed like one that could jump up. People could make expectations next year for a certain level of funding that might in fact not be there.
Actually, if you remember correctly, they asked for $52,000 from ARPA. I think it was 52.
Mm-hmm.
That the town took no action on at that time, and it was because of books that had been lost due to damage, and there was a lot that they were dealing with at that time. So the $30,000 request, they've expanded services in a very significant way in the last couple of years in terms of the work that they're doing. I think that $30,000 as a contribution for a community towards its library isn't.
It's not excessive.
It's not excessive is the word. It's not excessive, as opposed to the many communities who totally fund from tax dollars a library in their system, and then it's hundreds of thousands of dollars instead of $30,000. So, however the funding moves forward, I don't know what they'll ask for, and maybe next year they'll ask for 20, or maybe they'll ask for 50. I don't know. It depends on what their programming is and what they see their role in the community is in terms of providing services for residents. So that is a good question. As I said, I was totally trying to keep us under our thing without not funding that to that level this year, because I do think that it's warranted.
I definitely agree. They've done an amazing job. They're a big asset to the community. It's just when budget looks really good. It's just, there's a lot of new, just
Yeah.
in higher. It was just,
Is
first
there-
reaction is pump brakes, take a step back. So,
Well,
that was
and
it.
doing some of those things incrementally. Like for me, we are making some big jumps in a lot of places, and I've had a lot of people asking me about that. Like, and I love you guys, but the administrative salaries going up from 76,000 and 80 something thousand to 90 something, and a lot of those, if we can do those types of things incrementally and raise up our salaries that way, it makes more sense to me than making big huge jumps in those.
Any other questions, thoughts?
Can we speak from the floor?
You mean from the floor?
No, well, we're, what's that?
Are you still on the budget, or are you just a general question?
We're on the budget, just talking
Okay.
amongst
All right.
ourselves here right now. What'd you have?
Hmm?
You have a question?
I just have a quick question. I'd like to know where we stand. We got this beautiful new parking lot behind the clouds. There's no way to get down to go to the store. When or are we ever going to get steps or a ramp? I don't like parking on Main Street. It's difficult, and I don't like angle parking. And to come out of community pharmacy's parking lot is taking your life in your hands. That would be so convenient. I just want to know where do we stand on that? Oh.
So that's a project that seems simple, but it becomes much more complicated when you put in the ADA aspects and requirements. So what we've had engineering looking at it. We have a couple of potential designs, but then that runs into some other problems in that if we put the ramp in and it's at the proper grade to meet ADA, then it ends up placing the bottom of the ramp on property that's not ours. So now we have to get easements, and then that brings up another problem in that the landing locations end up being dirt and not pavement. And so then we have to determine if we're going to spend the money to pave that stretch that it doesn't belong to us and then maintain it. Because if we pave it and we are putting handicapped people there at that location in the wintertime, then that needs to be sanded and salted and plowed and all those things. So it becomes complicated. We are working on it, and I know it seems simple. It seems like just build some stairs, right? In fact, Public Works started to do that one day, and I went over and I was like, what are you doing? And they're like, well, we thought we'd build some stairs. And I said, we can't do that, because as much as we'd love to just do that, it opens us up to all these rules and like regulations we have to follow. So we're working on it, but it's a process.
Because it would be awfully nice just come down Central Street, turn in, go do my stuff on Main Street.
Absolutely.
But you've got to walk all the way around the block. I just think it's sad not to use that parking lot.
Understood.
Okay.
We want to help, but one step at a time. When we first put the parking lot in, it was to solve water issues that were coming down and flooding those buildings, and I think that the parking lot did its job, and it's helping a lot with that. Then once the parking lot was in, people we want access to it, and it's so we're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. To Eddie and Danny's point, one of the things that I had talked about was folks that aren't covered by a collective bargaining agreement. As Sue said, that over the course of the next 2 years, those collective bargains are 3% and 3%, I believe, for 2 years after that. The ability for the town manager and then us as the council to make changes on folks that aren't covered by a collective bargain, all the administration and stuff. To Danny's point is, and what I had talked to Sue about was just what you said, incremental. do we look at maybe like an 8 or a 9 or something for all of those folks, with the opportunity for that to be looked at again next year, and to do that incremental instead of bang here and then, you know, do you come back next year and say, no, you're not going to get any raise? I mean, that opportunity is there, the way that it's set up. So, like I say, that's one of the things that I thought of, is just what you said, of doing a incremental instead of the big swipe. And I understand what you said, Sue, about keeping the breadth the same, but again, when you're in a management position, sometimes the folks that are hourly end up making more than you do. I mean, they work more hours sometimes, and that's not a slight on anybody, but I don't think that we need to be stuck in the rate. The difference needs to be the same. You know, we don't need to keep if we give a 17% raise here, we don't need to make sure that same percentage is there. I think that we can look at an incremental that we have the ability over the course of the next 3 years. Well, yeah, the hourly contracted folks are at 3%. We may be in a position where we could go 8, 7, and 8. I'm not saying that, but then you're at least catching it up in not a such a.
It's predictable and it's consistent, so it's something that we're able to intentionally know that here are where the salaries are going to go with our administrative teams. I think that's important. I think that's important not only for, you know, budget-wise, but for the public, so that the public can see, all right, here's what we're doing with our salaries, and here's what we're doing with our administration.
And part of it, again, what I talked about was was an equity thing amongst the management folks. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm speaking for myself, but if we're all in the management of the town and we're looking across and somebody's getting a X amount of raise and somebody else is getting Y, and we're all considered part of the management, why? To me, that's a tougher pill to swallow when I'm looking across the desk and seeing somebody that's, you know, we're all part of the management team. And if we looked at it and said, no, all the management team can get X, and we can work from there. Well, X for one person is maybe a little bit more than X for another, but it's still, I can't even think of the word I'm trying to think of. So that was my thoughts.
What I was trying to do was look at the positions in comparable communities, and I've done that, and when I say we're in the middle, that's where these salaries as proposed for administration put us. I understand the concern over what that movement looks like. It looks like the same movement as happened with the rank and file, because that is what's happened, is that those wages have adjusted. If there was a commitment to taking these numbers and understanding that that's where we want to be, and doing that in a 2-year thing instead of all in 1 year, would that be more palatable to the council? Because where the number ends up is the right number.
Well, I think that's what we're looking at, is take a 3-year contract, and if all of a sudden we're looking at a 15% raise for somebody, you know, you can spread that 15 over 2 or 3, and we get to the same spot, because I can't expect that if somebody's getting a 10 to 15% raise this year, we were already saying we're giving the rank and file, the contracted people 3%. Are we saying that we're going to go 3% for the folks next year? Well, I don't know if that's the way we should be doing it. I think we can look at it in a fairer way.
Would you be willing to look at these over 2 years instead of over a 2-year thing to get there, instead of in 1 year?
Yeah, I think that's what we've done every year. There's been big jumps, and I understand why the jumps are there. I think it's just tough for folks, and I've gotten calls, and I know probably other folks have, to see all those jumps happen at once. So I think in order to maybe lessen it or smooth it out or make it even look better.
And make it predictable.
You know, that we can get there in a 2-year cycle.
And I'm happy to put that in if that's what you want to see the budget look like. that won't change the mill rate increase need.
No, I don't think.
No, I'm
that-
just saying that isn't going to move that needle enough to.
And that wasn't the concern that I've been taking. It was a big number. The mill rate, I think, is going to, like I said earlier, I don't think anybody nobody thinks that the mill rate wasn't going to go up. And I think we can absorb that. I mean, again, we're less than we were when most of us first started here on this council, and we've improved and gotten better services, and I think we're doing an all-around better job. I just, when I hear from folks that you see these big jumps, and if we can take care of these things in 2 years and still get there, I think it's just more palatable for folks. That's what I'm hearing. That's where I see. Anybody else?
Is that?
It's certainly palatable. Yeah, it's palatable. I would be interested in seeing the numbers. Yeah, I'll stop there. It's palatable.
Tonight, what you're doing is sending a budget to public hearing. So we can do this two ways. You can send what's here, and I can provide you with the changes that you've asked for in terms of doing that over a 2-year period instead of doing it all in 1 year. And if you wanted to, you can amend the budget at the night of the hearing to do just that. I only say that because there's numbers on paper, and I can't tell you what the other numbers look like right this minute. And if we're going to make a hearing on the 9th, putting that out there with the understanding that you want to see an alternative presented.
What's the pleasure of the rest of the council?
I'm fine with that.
I have no opposition.
Yeah.
And I think going forward too, Sue, is maybe the council discusses the process, of how we do our administrative, whether it's administrative contracts or administrative process in the future, so that as each year it is a little more predictable and is a little more, consistent.
This is honestly the first year that it's not been, and
No, yeah.
that's driven entirely by where the market went with these departments, and not because we were being inconsistent before.
Yep.
We
That's not really how I mean it.
I know, but the world changed in the past 3 years in a way in the public safety realm that is unprecedented. And what you saw presented was an attempt to address that so that we stay competitive. And I know that our people know that you care about them and that you want to be equitable, and they know that one of the reasons that I take stuff out of my budget and I reduce mine is because my people are important to me, and the equity for them is more important to me for them than it is for me. But, I also believe that they will understand that a commitment to doing this in 2 years is not a reflection on the fact that you don't think they're doing a good job, or that isn't, because that's not the case.
No, and I think too, I know that every year that I'm probably going to get a 3% raise. Like that's what school I'm in, and I think that for the board understands that their administrative contracts, they're going to be 3% every year. Now, if something comes forward that's all right, this is 8% this year, then it's a discussion. All right, so we're doing that because the climate, around the area, to keep it consistent with the police around the area, but we can see that jump change. We can know that it's it's there, and so that's, for me, that's why I keep saying, it's the consistency of knowing year to year to year that these, it's going to be between a 3 and a 5% raise, or we're going to do it this way, and so yeah, that's why I'm making the comments that I'm making.
I'm
Yep.
trying to understand what to give you and when
Yeah.
to give it to you in terms of
Yep.
what you want to see, but if you've said that the administrative things, adjustments that were larger being done over a 2-year thing is what you want to see, I will provide you that information so that you can see how that would impact the budgets. Is that what you want?
Yes, please.
Yep, works.
Thank you. Any other questions on the general fund? Are we okay to send that to the public hearing with some of the changes that we've talked about? Yes. There you go, ma'am.
Thanks.
Thank you. I think that was it for the budget review.
That's it.
All right. Next item is adjournment.
Motion adjourned. Second.
All those in favor? Thank you.